Good evening. On behalf of the 2007 Women's Week Committee, I would like to warmly welcome you to tonight's performance of Mommy Monologues. It has been a delight to work on this event and to see it come to fruition. When we sent out a call for submissions in January, we really had no idea what kind of response we would receive. But we received over 65 excellent submissions from faculty, staff, and community members, some of which brought us to tears, some left us laughing, and all of which left us contemplating the various experiences and roles women and men take on related to this year's theme, Motherhood Matters, Challenges, Complications, and New Definitions. Tonight we have the pleasure of presenting 20 women and men's monologues, most of which will be performed by the writers. After tonight's performance, please join us for a coffee and cookie reception in the lobby to visit with performers, family, and friends. Before we begin tonight's performance, I'd like to remind you all to turn off cell phones and any electronic devices. So, I'd like to also draw your attention to the other events taking place as part of Women's Week, sponsored by the University of Utah Office for Diversity. On Friday, March 9th, we featured the 2007 Sundance film, Mother Superior, which explores issues and experiences of women and mothers in Utah addicted to methamphetamines. Utah has the third highest number of women addicted to methamphetamines in the nation. The film was followed by a discussion with filmmaker and co-creator Alex Mack and University of Utah sociologist Teresa Martinez. The art exhibit for this year, which opened March 5th, will run through March 16th. From 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. in the Bailey Exhibition Hall in the College of Architecture. This year's exhibit features the work of Alice Perot, whose fascinating painting titled Ride is featured on our Women's Week posters and our website. We hope you will also join us for other upcoming events this week. Tomorrow at noon, there is a panel in the Alpen Union East Ballroom titled On the Clock, moderated by Deborah Daniels. Panelists Nilfer Kagate, Beth Clement, Karen Kwan, and Paula Smith explore the successes and pitfalls of women and mothers balancing life in the workforce and explore how the traditional roles of women are continually being challenged. We are fortunate to have two keynote speakers this year. Join us on Wednesday at noon in the Alpen Union Saltaire Room for our keynote address with Julianne Malveaux. Recognized for her provocative, progressive, and insightful observations, Julianne Malveaux, an economist, author, and commentator, has been described by Cornel West as the most iconoclastic public intellectual in the country. Her contributions to the public dialogue on issues such as race, culture, and gender, and their economic impacts are helping to shape public opinion in 21st century America. A book signing will follow her presentation. Also join us Thursday evening at 7 o'clock p.m. in the Saltaire Room again for our keynote address with Susan Douglas, Professor of Communication Studies at the University of Michigan and Chair at the department. Susan Douglas is the author of The Mommy Myth, The Idealization of Motherhood and How It Undermines Women, Growing Up Female with the Mass Media, and Where the Girls Are, chosen as a top 10 book by National Public Radio, Entertainment Weekly, and the McLaughlin Group. As part of the 2007 Women's Week Crisis Nursery Community Service Project, you will find an information table set up at each Women's Week event, including tonight's event, where we will be accepting donations and providing information for the Crisis Nursery, which is a 24-hour center providing free respite and emergency child care. For more information on our events, you may also visit our website. But now, please join me in welcoming our host for this evening's performance, Beth Clement, history professor at the University of Utah. Beth?
Welcome. Thank you so much for coming for our monologues. As Tina said, I'm Elizabeth Clement. I'm in the history department here at the University of Utah, where I teach women's history and history of sexuality and all kinds of other stuff that you should take. America sentimentalizes motherhood, but it doesn't really actually support it. After all, getting a Hallmark card once a year from your partner and your kids isn't really the same as the Canadian system, which gives either the mother or the father a year off of paid leave. Various pregnancy books tell us to pamper ourselves while we're pregnant, but what they mean by that is that we should get pedicures and take long soaks in lavender bath oil. I personally would feel a lot more pampered if I had access to quality, affordable daycare and a medical system that didn't have a C-section rate of 33%. But, you know, I'm a feminist, which means I'm shrill and demanding. This evening's monologues explore many aspects of motherhood, but what struck me the most about them is the honesty and eloquence with which they talk about both the joys and the difficulties of motherhood. Motherhood is not sentimentalized in these essays. Instead, they accurately reflect the sweetness of motherhood, the intimacy, and of course the pain and the costs. They reflect the delicate balance that is motherhood for American women. I also like the diversity of our selection, which highlights that while the joys are much the same, the difficulties can and are shaped by those big social forces that usually shape our lives: race, class, sexuality, family structure, and support. Raising healthy black children in Utah presents different challenges than raising children with profound disabilities, and both of these realities are different than being a gay or lesbian parent, which this state has attempted to eliminate altogether with bans on gay adoption and gay foster parenting. Taken as a whole, these essays explore the complicated nature of motherhood, of parenting, and of family, tasks which fulfill us and make us whole, which we try to perfect every day in this very imperfect world. So welcome.
I'm Robin Pratt, and this is titled Missing Miles. For 3 days now, I've had a little ache. I notice it mostly in the morning, when Miles wakes up and walks quietly past me to lie on the couch and slowly wake up. It used to be that I was the first thing he sought upon waking each morning. When Miles was a toddler, I'd hear his little footsteps padding into our bedroom, pausing by my side of the bed. I'd peel back the blanket and pat the bed softly, inviting him to crawl in. He'd put his cool bare feet on my legs, and we'd slowly wake up together, the morning sun golden on his hair. On mornings when I was already up, Miles would wander to find me, and we'd curl up in our big chair together. Nestled in the crook of my left elbow, his warm and sleepy body melted into my lap, and I'd often rub his feet and hands as we rocked. Now my Miles is 9, and up until 3 days ago, the first thing he'd do in the morning was come wrap his arms around my middle in a warm hug. Hi, Mommy. I tried telling myself that most 9-year-old boys aren't so cuddly with their moms, and that I've really had a long stretch of cuddling with this child. But it makes me sad to think that these past 3 days will soon become the norm. Just as I finish those thoughts, I hear the front door open, then close, and footsteps wandering from room to room. Mom? I'm downstairs, I call from the basement. It is Miles, just home from a sleepover. I put down my notebook and pat my knee, and he climbs onto my lap. And for a moment, I simply inhale the very essence of my son. He tells me about his late night, and that Mick's mom cooked bacon for breakfast. And then he asks me if I'll come watch him play Nintendo for a while. Oh, please, anything but that. So here we are, side by side on the playroom couch, and as Miles makes Mario jump and flip through a complicated obstacle course, he drapes one leg over mine and leans into my shoulder. And slowly my little ache melts away. My son isn't done with his cuddling. It's simply taking a new shape. I hope he will still thread his hand into mine when we are taking a walk together, and that he will still climb onto my lap now and then to tell me about his latest adventure. But let's face it, with Miles weighing nearly 80 pounds now, it's probably time for me to accept this change. And besides, with Miles sitting next to me, it's much easier to slip out of the playroom when I've had enough of Mario.
I'm Tilly Wilfer, my mommy's mommy. There was a time, a very brief time, when I stopped being a mommy. My only child attained the age when he didn't want one. While I could argue that he still needed a mommy, the truth was he would not accept me. He declared his independence, and with that came my own irrelevance to his world. At first it was difficult. As a single parent, a large portion of my life was devoted to the care of the child. My time was strictly apportioned. It was my duty to ensure that he was housed, fed, clothed, educated, picked up, dropped off, kept safe, nurtured, appropriately socialized, and loved. After 20 years of this type of commitment, it's hard to suddenly abandon it. But I gradually realized that when he set himself free, he'd set me free as well. My time was entirely my own. I could visit a friend, stay late at work, let my cupboards go bare and live on junk food, take a night class, go to the movie that I wanted to see. The list of possibilities was endless, and soon I was running around town like a chubby, poorly dressed Paris Hilton. And then it ended. I became a mommy again. My own mother became ill and could no longer live on her own. My father was gone, and she simply couldn't manage. Her mind was sharp, but her little body was pretty well worn out. And so she came to live with me, and so I became my mommy's mommy. It wasn't what I expected when I moved her in, and I'm sure it wasn't what she expected either. But the truth is, within a very short period of time, it became my duty to ensure that my mom was housed, fed, clothed, picked up, dropped off, kept safe, nurtured, appropriately socialized, and loved. As her health deteriorated, it was having a child in reverse. With Mom, each milestone was a regression, not a progression. Soon, my time became devoted to dressing her, feeding her, bathing her, helping her get around, and so on. My world reverted to the time when most of my activities were designed to meet someone else's needs. But this time, I went to the gerontologist's office, not the pediatrician's. I watched CNN and 60 Minutes, not Ninja Turtles and Spider-Man. My shopping trips were mostly to Rite Aid, never Toys R Us. I bought Depends instead of Pampers. And instead of reading fairy tales aloud, I read my mom her letters and obituaries as elderly friends and family passed away. I won't lie to you. There were many times when I resented my life. I resented her life. I resented the great cosmic joke that had turned me into my own mother's mom. But underneath the resentment was fear. Not so much fear that she would die, because that was a given from the day she moved in. No, the fear was that after she was gone, all my memories would revolve around these last few difficult years with her. That I wouldn't remember my own mommy as a mommy, but instead I would remember her as this child that neither she nor I wanted her to be. I was afraid that I had lost forever the mom who fed, clothed, nurtured, and loved me. I was afraid my mom, as mom, was dead to me before she died. And then it was over. Mom was gone. And after the hearse had driven away and the hospice people had packed up all the paraphernalia, I was alone again. Memories rushed in, and they were surprisingly beautiful. Mom always there when we got home from school, lipstick on and dinner on the stove. Holidays and family vacations made special, no matter how tight the budget. Her pride in even our smallest accomplishments. Her wicked sense of humor. Her tiny feet always in high heels and pantyhose. How hard she worked every day to give us a happy, healthy home, and her long letters of encouragement when my life was a mess, which is more often than I'd care to admit. And at some point, as I remembered all the love and support she gave me, it hit me. The minute my mommy left me permanently, she returned to me. I got my mommy back, and now I just miss her so, my mom.
My name is Kristen Peterson. I'm reading for my mother, Elaine Chrisman Peterson. On Nothingness, a Young Mother's Thoughts. A drop in a vast sea. I am one of those who hasn't made much of a mark on life's pages. An insignificant personality who has never known the thrill of headlines or the fame of great works. These hours spent confined to a simple home aren't enough. Domestic drudgery has chained me to a destiny akin to nothingness. Talents? I have them. Surely I could have had a glorious career and added a title to my name besides that of mother. The same mother's thoughts years later. My years were plain in contrast to many, but I gained much, grew much. Those children seemingly shackled to my apron strings taught me more than I taught them. Strange that I should ever have thought the world needed me more than they. From them I learned the courage I needed to be a nobody to a world of millions, yet be a somebody. My simple labors and maybe heroic deeds will go unsung, but those who love me know, and I have learned, that is all that matters. My moment rare. Here in my cozy kitchen, I work away, middle-aged and humming. It is a good day, the Sabbath, and I am at peace. Amid the onions, carrots, and pot roast now cooking in the oven. Spring is close, still waiting to return. I can see the leafless branches from my window. I inwardly rejoice. Our children and their little ones are coming for dinner. For now, my husband sits there in the corner, all Sunday paper-bound. A moment rare floods my contented mind, quite unexpectedly. I found myself the woman I always hoped to be.
My name is Jenny Bremdine, and my monologue is called Sleep. And for the benefit of my husband out there in the audience, I want to say that he was very supportive through my whole ordeal, but some journeys you just have to go through alone. When my son Gabriel was born, December 17, 2000, the snow was falling. He came from my body, he split me in two. I was white from losing so much blood, I couldn't walk for a week. They wrapped him in a warm blanket and he fell asleep. I was wide awake, and I would stay awake for 3 months. Motherhood is the best thing that ever happened to me, but those first 3 months were dark. Through it all, somehow, I cared for my son. I fed him and I bathed him. I kept him safe and warm. On December 17th, I became one of the 10% of women who are no longer themselves after giving birth. My heart pounds, my mind races, and I sweat a lot. A foreign spirit has invaded my body. I sleep maybe an hour or two a night, and then I am up, staring in the darkness, unable to read, unable to concentrate. I just watch my son and listen to him breathe. I draw the blankets tighter around his little body to keep him warm. With each sunrise after a sleepless night, I become more fearful that I won't be able to care for my son. I am becoming weaker. It's Christmas Eve and I've been awake for 3 days straight. I can't do what I tell my mom. She leaves the next day for Canada. My sister is about to give birth, and my mom missed the birth of her first child. She can't miss the second. Most nights I lie awake until Gabriel wakes up crying for milk. I feed him in the dark. Someone has brought me a book, Operating Instructions, by Anne Lamott, an account of the first year of her son Sam's life. I let myself read only a few pages a night. It consoles me. Anne is a former alcoholic, anxiety-ridden, sleep-deprived, dreadlocked, born-again, very funny woman. Her anguish is my anguish on those cold, dark nights. But some nights, after reading my 3 pages, I turn off the lamp and sit with Gabriel in the dark. I am so exhausted. Tears are pouring down my face. Even in the dark, I can see Gabriel's big eyes looking at me. I am so sorry, I whisper to him. I am so sorry. He stares at me, not blinking. Each day, the physical and mental pain become more excruciating. Sleeping pills don't work. I look in the mirror at my sunken eyes and begin thinking irrationally that maybe my body has lost the chemical that makes me sleep. Many months later, I learned that indeed, a sleep-inducing hormone is suppressed in many women who give birth. I start imagining a giant wall separating the sleep and the awake worlds. I am trapped and don't know how to get to the other side. This is not normal, I finally decide, so I put Gabriel in the car and drag myself to the library. I am afraid. My hands shake. I am so wasted. I find a book on postpartum depression, as that's the only thing I can think of that might be wrong with me. I don't open it until I get home. I turn the pages, my heart racing, and then I read a phrase that's the only thing in a while that's made sense. Postpartum depression, it says, is a misnomer. In my case, though I felt like I was going to die from exhaustion, I never felt depressed. PPD, it says, is really an anxiety disorder, and I am everything it describes. I have come to fear the nighttime. I can't stop making piles of things around the house. At night, I search the basement for dusty old candles, the glass ones with the Virgin of Guadalupe emblazoned on the front. I light them and pray. I am not religious, never have been. Desperation drives me to a higher power. I whisper to the Virgin in Spanish to let me sleep. She doesn't hear me. Usually I tend to watch tragic Middle Eastern documentaries. That's my specialty. But I tell my husband that all I can handle is something with Bill Murray. He brings home What About Bob? I stare at the screen as it flashes in the dark. Bob is slow. He wears a fishbowl around his neck. For the first time, I have the energy to smile. I feel exactly like I should be wearing a fishbowl around my neck. It is now March. Lying on the floor at night, I suddenly think of Canada, where my parents live. If I can just drag my body onto a plane and get to Canada, everything will be all right. So 3 months after Gabriel's birth, I finally have the strength to do that. Flight attendants smile and coo at Gabriel. I feel transparent. They can see my bloodshot eyes, my fear. But I cross the 49th parallel, and Mom and Dad are at the airport. Their coats are rumpled, their faces lined. I sink into them. The sky here is so big, these prairie skies, they are endless. The dark evergreens shoot into the cold pink sky at night. It is crisp and quiet. I used to run these roads at night, even when it was 40 below. Then I was really alive. The house is warm. Mom is in bed reading a mystery. I can hear the shuffle of Dad's slippers in the next room. Gabriel is fast asleep. The blinds are open in my old bedroom so I can see the pink sky. It starts to snow, just lightly. I close my eyes until morning.
My name is Gabriella Archuleta, and I'm going to read my piece called The Unexpected Mother. As a child, I dreamed of the future when I would become a mother. I played house with my friends and cousins. Someone would be Dad, someone would be Mom, and the dolls were our kids. Never once did we play house as a step-family. Frankly, I had never thought about it because I grew up with married parents in a traditional family. Nothing prepared me to become a stepmother in my 20s. Generally, stepmotherhood is not a desired status. We all grow up hearing stories about wicked stepmothers, and new stepmothers are rarely, if ever, honored with a new stepkid shower. If anything, potential stepmothers are chided with words of caution from family and friends, and not much is discussed about how to be a stepmother and the unique dynamics that the role brings with it. I could have decided not to accept this pseudo-mother role and walk away. I had met my husband Arwini years earlier, but decided to go down another path and later regretted it. When we met again, he had 2 small kids by his side. I didn't want to make the same mistake, so I decided to accept Arwini, his 2 kids, Nayel and Araksan, and everything that went with it. Honestly, I had no idea what to expect. Immediately, I felt a sense of uncertainty about my role. I cared for the children as if I was their mother, but they already had a mother, and I didn't want to take her place.
If I had a parenting approach that was unique or different, I felt discouraged and inadequate when people would say dismissive things like, "You wouldn't understand, you're not a mother." Other times, people recognized my efforts and told me things like, "You are such a mother," or "Happy Mother's Day," which I greatly appreciated. There was a time when I felt a loss of control over my own life. While I chose to be a stepmom, it drastically changed everything I was used to, and I didn't have the usual 9 months to prepare. Gone were the weekends I could sleep in and exercise at leisure. They were replaced with a schedule that started early, preparing meals, changing diapers, rearranging my schedule to allow for quiet nap time, and trying to keep things clean in between. My husband did not require that I shared the tasks of childcare, but I wanted to feel like a part of the family instead of a bystander. We even enrolled in a community education course called Strengthening Step Families that helped us understand the dynamics, challenges, and joys that come with a step family. Even still, I occasionally have the thought that I'm just not suited to be a stepmom. In the middle of trying to overcome my self-doubt, I bonded with my stepkids. Nael, very attached to her dad, once refused to be held by anyone else. She came to me, let me do her hair, and for the first time would not cry if her dad stepped out of the room. It pleased me she felt trust within our relationship. Roxanne gave me my first applause after an enthusiastic attempt at the song Itsy Bitsy Spider. It will be a while before he realizes I cannot carry a tune, and even though I know my singing abilities are beyond remedy, his genuine smile and chubby little hands clapping made me happy to be a stepmom. I was adjusting pretty well to my newfound family life when Talia came along. Talia is not my husband's daughter. She's Nael's older half-sister, who is not as fortunate as Nael and Roxanne to be born to such a loving and involved dad. In fact, she rarely saw her father. When Arwini was picking up Nael, Talia asked why he always took her sister. Arwini told her that he missed Nael when he did not have her, and Talia replied, "But you haven't seen me all week either. Don't you miss me?" We started taking Talia on a regular basis, half of the week, every week, as much as we had Nael and Roxanne. At first I protested. It seemed out of the ordinary that we were caring for a little girl that was not our own. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that she was with us because she wanted to be with us. She felt safe, secure, and a sense of family. Now, just as we have beds, clothes, and favorite toys for Nael and Roxanne, Talia also has a bed, clothes, and her favorite toys at our home. She knows she will always have a home with us, and we are fortunate to have her as much as we do, even during the holidays. She's treated like one of the cousins, nieces, and grandchildren by extended family. My stepkids have taught me that you don't have to be related by blood to love and acceptance. So I started out as a child, playing house, mimicking a traditional nuclear family. Adulthood has something else in store for me, and I feel grateful to be a part of my blended mosaic-like family because my stepkids, Talia, Nael, and Roxanne, have gifted me with something that I've always wanted, and that's to be a mother.
I remember an early morning in 1989 standing in my kitchen fixing a sandwich for my 6-year-old son before I took him to school. I was getting more and more agitated as feelings of confusion, resentment, and shame crawled in and around and through me. A voice in my head started screaming. I won the award for the best communication dissertation in the nation. I delivered a top 3 paper at our national convention. I edited a prominent journal and wrote a lead article. So why am I making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches? I remember that morning. because it was the first time in many months that my pain didn't consume me. I actually started to laugh. It was the first time in a long time I had laughed at myself. After teaching in Ohio, my wife and I moved to Utah, and our son was born in 1983. Difficulty in our marriage got worse as I was working harder and traveling more while my wife battled depression. Eventually, she left the marriage, and I came to accept that reconciliation would not occur. I was left with a visualization from my therapy of her skipping into the sunset with a rose between her teeth, and realization that my son needed me. In the late 1980s, Utah divorce courts had little experience with a father who was seeking sole custody and expecting to remain with his child in the family home. I acted from a gut feeling that my son needed stability, living in the same house, going to the same school, playing with the same friends. I had this inescapable sense that he needed me to step up, that I needed to transform my life. I had to give up delusions about being an academic rock star, change the terms of my employment as a professor, quit traveling, make less money, and start making peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. I needed to grow up, to do something more significant than anything I had ever done before in my life. While the choice I made to raise my son by myself made perfect sense to me, I discovered it did not make sense to most people. My faculty mentor told me my choice was, quote, stupid. Others suggested I get remarried or at least find a woman to take care of my son. Even dating, I got surprised. One woman loved that I was raising my son, but her increasing advice about how to raise him turned into her authority as a mom. Another woman got frustrated with me because my son's care came ahead of our social life. I saw that people's difficulties with a man raising a child was less disapproval and more an inability to conceive of it in concrete material terms. We routinely conflate the social role of mothering with gender and sex in our culture, even to the point that it's common to think of all women as natural mothers and mothering as something impossible for a man. My students accept men who perform non-traditional gender roles in the workplace, nurse, elementary school teacher, secretary, yet they resist the idea that a man could mother his child. Gender roles seem less powerful in the public productive sphere than in the private reproductive part of our culture. I have funny anecdotes, notes from school addressed Dear Moms, the Mother's Day card I get every spring. But there's also a subtle stigma. I suspect few women have ever been confronted in a department store when their child was crying, but I was, and I had to convince the store employee this was actually my son. I have interviewed single men who have sole custody and married men who are stay-at-home dads. To the person, these men are grateful for the personal choice or circumstance that led them to raising their children. Like them, I have experienced the extremes of social reaction, from, oh, you're a martyr, what a saint, to, why in the world are you doing that? Neither of which makes any sense to me. So what's not to get about raising a child? Masculinity, femininity, sexual identity, orientation, these are complex issues in our culture. But raising a child is a primary role that individuals of all kinds take on. The rewards, satisfactions, challenges, and costs that I experience by committing myself to the social role of mothering are far more significant than being understood by others. My colleague Karen suggested I finish with a poster we have both seen of a rather buff man in a thong. The caption was, "Do you have the balls to stay home?" Fortunately, I can still laugh at myself.
I'm Mary Dixon, and this is Tea and Tulips. The nurse comes into the waiting room to tell us we better come right away. My sister is on a respirator and failing fast.
The children, I whisper. Should they be seeing this? Should they be watching their mother die?
I never had kids of my own, so I don't know how to protect the three my sister shared with me. I was included on all their birthdays, holidays, and family outings. On Mother's Day, I sent my sister cards, thanking her for sharing them. She sent me cards, thanking me for loving them. Jojo was the baby, and the only girl. Now, at 16, the baby is watching her mother die. I hold her as family huddles around my sister's bed. We watch the lines on the monitor suddenly go flat.
What's wrong? Why did it go out? I ask.
She's gone, the nurse says. She's gone. And with those two words, the wailing begins. We wail like some broken animal, except Jojo, who quietly buries her face in my arms. Our mourning and all the sleepless nights that follow begin on this cold March day. Jojo has other aunts, but they have children of their own. I'm the one with time and space in my heart to fill, the one who takes a broken-hearted 16-year-old to buy her first prom dress. She comes out of the dressing room in a shimmering blue gown that hugs her perfect hourglass figure. It's the first time I notice the little girl is gone. My God, she's such a beauty. Her mother died last week, I whispered to the sales clerk. Be nice to her, I mean to say. Be tender with this one. I am the one who takes Jojo to Philadelphia when I travel for business. The trip will mend her motherless heart. Gay Bingo will cheer her up. Late-night movies in our hotel room will help her forget. At 3 in the morning, the TV is still blaring when she finally slips into sleep. She's still sleeping late in the afternoon when I return exhausted to our room. Trips become our refuge. Planes take us far from our pain. I don't want to be here for Christmas, Jojo says soon after Thanksgiving. So we spend Christmas in Tahiti, where we won't think about the sister and mother who's no longer here. I take her to Paris. Paris will help heal her. While she sleeps in, I walk through the Marais trying to think of how to start a conversation about our mutual grief, but I can't get the words out. Instead, I pack our days and nights with never-ending distractions. I take her to the top of the Eiffel Tower. I take her on the huge Ferris wheel in the Place de Concorde. I take her to the Moulin Rouge for a sip of champagne while a bare-breasted woman dances underwater with a python. In all our travels, in all the years we cling to each other, Jojo never cries, and I never bring up her mother, even though I go to grief counseling and cry my way through boxes of tissue, always asking, what about the children? Shouldn't Jojo cry? But she doesn't. Not in Philadelphia, not in Tahiti, not in Paris. Not when her brother flees to the wilds of Alaska in a beat-up truck full of rice and beans. Not when she brings me an orange tree for Mother's Day. Not when her father remarries. Jojo calls on a Saturday morning to ask if she can come over. Her father has sold the house. The sudden news unnerves me. The house was our center. Jojo and her brothers grew up there. We spent every holiday there. My God, I was married there. And the tulips. My sister and the kids planted hundreds of tulips in the yard for my wedding. Now Jojo stands in my kitchen with a look on her face I've never seen. Her father and his wife are already in the new house. She's supposed to move in by Monday. It's so depressing, she says. I've never lived anywhere else. And the new house, I ask? How's the new house? It's so big, she says. That's when her voice cracks. We'll be in this big house. She stops mid-sentence. I put my arms around her, this girl 21, who fills me with such overwhelming tenderness I could burst. All I can say is, oh, Jojo, we have to dig up the tulips before Monday. I remember when we planted them. Her words collide as she cries openly, loudly. I'm losing my mother again. We'll be in this new house. None of her pictures will be on her, saying, "You need to cry. It's okay. It's okay." I don't know my mother. I don't know her. All my happy memories of her are gone. You have to tell me about my mother. Tell me all the stories. She says it with such desperation I am undone. But I'm also relieved. I've waited 5 years for this. Show me all the pictures of when she was young and healthy. I laugh while I cry. Oh, the pictures. Do I have pictures? A basement full. Don't we all know, Jojo says, you were always taking pictures. Your mother was very sexy, I tell her. This surprises her. Oh, yes, the boys loved her. She had a figure like yours. You'll see in the pictures. You can take what you want. I kept them for you. Now, Jojo will become the keeper of the pictures. She says she'll fill her room with them. And we'll plant the tulips, I tell her, stroking her hair. I'll tell you the stories. I have so many stories, I don't know where to start. You better put on the tea kettle. And for the first time, we talk about her mother.
Good evening. I'm Neva Stevenson, and this is called It's What We Mothers Do. I used to worry I might not have a child. It was a vague, what-if kind of feeling. Then I'd get a clutch in my stomach as I allowed myself to feel for an instant the panic of what that would mean. I was 26 and married to a man I fell in love with in the first grade. I didn't want to let him down. I even made a furtive call to the psychic network. I'm a skeptic, but I reasoned if I could rest assured if the prediction was good, and I could still remain true to my beliefs if bad news loomed. But my fears were allayed. Our firstborn, said the psychic, would be a boy. As luck would have it, she was right, and the first of our 3 boys came along on a balmy tax day in 1993. His eyes were a penetrating blue. As I watched my son breathe, I felt if I never experienced another thing in life, it would be just fine. Motherhood was a cloak of instinct I fastened around me with ease. Our son wouldn't nurse for 6 weeks, but he caught on. He writhed with colic for months, so we walked miles around his room to ease his pain. Then his head grew oblong, and it came to resemble an eggplant. I ignored the impolite stares. Instead, I cupped his narrow crown constantly, perhaps sensing it begged attention. The doctor told us our son was okay, but he wasn't. And so began the journey of motherhood for me. When you have a sick child, you tend to lie in wait for the other shoe to drop. It seems a closet full of them has dropped in the last 13 years. Not dainty Manolos either. And that clutch I felt so long ago, when I wondered if I'd ever even be a mother, was replaced with the mother of all merit badges, motherhood itself. My baby's head grew oblong because his soft spots closed prematurely. His brain struggled as if it were in a pressure cooker. And then his skull bones literally snapped off as the neurosurgeon delicately coaxed them away from the dural lining. Free at last, our child's brain rose up like a loaf of bread. Our son took his first breath on April 15, 1993, and then again 16 months later in an operating room at Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore. Over the next 3 years, surgeons rebuilt his skull with titanium plates and screws, tools seemingly more suitable for building a spare room than our toddler's cranium. A ribbon of skin stretches across the top of his head from ear to ear. The hair doesn't grow there. His brain, like that arc of skin, was in part a blank slate. We waited patiently for the slate to become cluttered with knowledge. We wait still. Our second son arrived in 1996. From the moment he was nestled in my arms, I felt serenely confident that this child was okay. He was strong, and blissfully, exquisitely, thankfully normal. With your second, you wonder if you can love as much as you did the first, and then you can't believe you ever wondered. As our second child blossomed in preschool, our first son's seizures began. He was 5. The promise of sponge-like absorption of all he hadn't learned in those first years of life had not come to fruition. He was globally, developmentally delayed. Years later, delayed has given way to disabled. He is 14 and functions at a 4-year-old level. The headaches bombard him with a vengeance. No one knows why. What we do know is that seizures fire from all over his brain and that he's incredibly tough. Son number 3 came along in 2001 and unwittingly brought what our family craved, balance. It's tempting to dwell on what's right and what's wrong when one child is healthy and the other is not. 2 healthy children helped me to stop doing that. I came to realize that sometimes things just happen. I came to accept what is. As the boys grow, my husband and I try to focus on the beauty in our life that coexists with our worry. We tell stories, we play games, we go to church. My middle child is the big brother and has grown into this realization with grace and acceptance. My youngest provides the breather. He dilutes the waters of constant worry. Life feels complete. So it doesn't matter that our oldest will always be the baby, or that his younger brothers are, in the truest sense, his keepers. Together, we all weather the seizures, the headaches, the daily cocktail of 27 pills, the loss of appetite, the interrupted plans, the hot baths, sometimes 3 and 4 a day, because they're the only thing that distract from the chaos in his brain. The implantation of a device in his chest cavity to combat the seizures that has yet really to work. An ailing child is a constant for me. It's something that most mothers mercifully don't know. I hope they will never know. But when I meet a mother with a situation like mine, we gravitate toward each other, and we are enveloped in a gush of words, the 2 of us, with knowing nods and the inevitable trace of mist in our eyes. And then, like 2 old acquaintances, having covered all that's transpired in the last 10 years at breakneck speed, we part, spent, replenished, and resolved. We'll get through another day, we'll find a way to cope, we'll rejoice in what we cherish. We'll pick up the mess, we'll make the dinners, we'll do the homework, and we'll weather the pain. We'll remember to appreciate every moment of it. We'll do it because it's what we mothers do. It's what we mothers do.
My name is Robin Wilkeston, and I'll be performing Top of the Circle by Shaz Bennett. When I was a child, I had a recurring nightmare that I was a sack of sugar and that these people were chasing after me, trying to make sugar cookies out of me. And I would wake up terrified and jump out of the bed far enough so that the spatulas underneath couldn't get me, and I'd run into my mother's room and jump in bed with her. I'd say, "Mom, I just had the food chain dream again." I had just learned about the food chain because my cat that I wanted so badly to love me had eaten my pet gerbil. Gerbils are very low on the food chain, but I don't think they have nightmares about it. I wasn't very comforted to know that we were basically on the top end of this circle because I couldn't comprehend how you could be at the top of a circle. My nephew was born 3 weeks after my mother died on Mother's Day. The day my mother died, this woman had brought us baked potatoes and bacon bits for lunch, and we were all sitting around eating our baked potatoes and bacon bits, and I was watching my mother sleep. And I wondered what someone who is dying dreams of, and is it different than someone who is dying of AIDS or someone like me who's just living and thereby dying? My brother said, "I think she's really dying." We all put down our baked potatoes, and I, being the youngest, climbed in bed with her and under the covers and draped my arm and leg over her torso and whispered to her, "Don't leave me." I should believe more. I go to psychic fairs and I walk up to all the booths and I say in my head, "Fuck you." I figure whoever the real psychics are will say out loud, "No, fuck you." But nobody ever does. They all just smile and invite you to sit down. She breathed out and never breathed in again. No one in the room said anything. It was too quiet. I wanted to hear her speak again. We were together alone. The lady who had brought us the baked potatoes for lunch came in when I was looking out the window at our mountain enveloped in clouds. She didn't know what had just happened to this lady, but she leaned her head in and whispered, "Can I have the bacon bits?" My brother sort of absently handed her the bacon bits, and she said, "Thanks." She left, and we all sat there silently until my dad started to laugh, and then we all started to laugh. My dad said, "They don't even taste like bacon, they taste like shit." That was the only time I ever heard my father swear. Later, after the guy came and took my mother's body away and told me I shouldn't hold her hand anymore because soon the blood begins to settle and coagulate around my fingers. It leaves an odd indentation, apparently. It's very hard to cover with makeup. He didn't notice that I checked to see if my hands were forever imprinted in hers. Even later, though, still the same day, although you'd never know that, my sister was humming that Peggy Lee perfume song, and I started singing, "Bring home the bacon, fry it up in a pan, and never ever let you forget you're a man, 'cause I'm a woman." I loved that song. I believed that woman. I wanted to be her. I didn't know what to think about this right now. It was too random. I will never live the life my mother lived. I borrowed Alice in Wonderland and Through the Looking Glass from my grandfather's library without asking, because I'm not thoroughly good after my mother died. I had wrote in them and circled important passages and bent the pages and underlined things I wanted to remember forever. I brought them back to my grandpa and said, "I love these books." He opened them, closed them, looked down at me and said, "You have destroyed these books." How could I have destroyed them? I loved them. If my mother had been there, she would have given him money to replace the books. She would have taken me outside. She would have been furious. She would have said, "Shaz, this is very important. You didn't destroy those books. You improved them." I remember my mom used to always say, "If you say it, it's a lie. If you write it down, it's art." So I wrote it all down.
I'm Cynthia Lane, and this is the Circle Game. My son was not quite 3. My daughter was a month old. I had a house in the suburbs, 2 cars in the driveway, a dog, a cat, a good-looking employed husband, and a girlfriend. If my life was one of those children's books that show pictures that say, "Circle which of these things don't belong," depending on who you asked and where in the timeline you asked it, you could have a really creative time in your circling. I didn't plan on having children when I was younger. I thought it would be something exotic, radical, someone to make headlines. Then after college, I decided to get married. I picked someone not for passion, but for stability. I picked a job that paid bills, not that made press. Children seem like a good idea when you're embracing stability. They need it, deserve it, thrive on it. I had them, looked into their eyes, and I was forever smitten. I was brought up to do the right thing, and I did it, quietly. I paid the bills, changed the diapers, called my mother on Sundays. I did the right things. I didn't even notice when I began to fade away, just that like all good mothers, I had. Mothers who place their children's lives in front of their own agendas tend to take a seat somewhere in the back. The girlfriend was more of a surprise to me than the marriage or the children. I didn't go looking for one, she found me. I found passion, and I didn't know what to do with it, or with him, or with her. I didn't know which picture in the book to circle. For the first time in a long time, maybe in forever, she was truly what I wanted for me. She was my choice, a choice that had nothing to do with stability, but instead with my own desire. A strange thought for someone who now exactly matched her children's wallpaper. A new right suddenly became visible to me on the page, not so much to the rest of the world. To understate the whole situation, it was awkward at best. Everyone had to adjust to their new roles. We went to a party. My husband introduced me as his wife and her as my wife. We had a family portrait taken with the 5 of us. He moved on, he remarried. His new mother-in-law, flustered at my appearing at something we all attended, attempted to introduce us to her friends. She stuttered, waved a hand at me, and said, "This is Cynthia," before, then pointing next to my ex-husband, and then pointing to her daughter, and after. Puzzled faces stared at her after this announcement. Her daughter gracefully amended, "This is Cynthia, the mother of his children." "Oh," they all said, and that was enough. Rules we could live with and by. The mother of his children, the father of mine, enough. The children were enough. Clearly, I loved them. They came first, before, during, and after all the family changes. I made mistakes sometimes in grief or emotion. Things continued to change, but the children came first. We all went to their back-to-school nights, to their performances, to the PTA meetings. We made a vow never to hold them hostage to our hostilities or our shortcomings. No one was off limits. No child was made to stay or go or choose. We only loved, and they flourished. Now my son will graduate from high school in June. My girlfriend put on her hard hat to teach him to drive stick shift in her truck. She needed it. I have a picture of her standing in the front lawn holding him in her arms at 12 and one of him holding her in his at 15. My daughter whispered in her ear that she thought she was ready for that real bra at 12. The 2 of us went to Victoria's Secret. My girlfriend, who doesn't even own one, carefully picked it out, paid for it, issued instructions. It went into a pink box, stuffed with layers of tissue paper, tied with ribbons, and sprayed with enough perfume that the scent followed us home from the mall and into my daughter's bedroom. She was thrilled. This spring, we will throw her a Sweet 16 party. My girlfriend threatens to sit in a lawn chair in the driveway and shoot at any would-be misbehaving suitors. None of us are sure whether or not she is joking. Time will tell. No one messes with the babies, even when the babies are taller than us. No one touches their lives without all of us feeling it. Because, as always, the children come first, and that is how it is, and how it's always been, and that simply and completely and rightly is for me enough.
I'm Tiffany Merrill, and I'm reading for Michelle Haas, 3 Times as a Keeper. A baby cries, or is it me crying? Another month of wishing, gone, only to be left with the pain and having to tell my partner that we're not pregnant again. A heart beats loud like a drum. It's ringing in my ears while I hold back the screams. The doctor tells us adoption is the best option, so we start the long process of paperwork, fingerprints. Hold on tight, we tell ourselves, and prepare for the ride of our lives. We hear a faint heartbeat ringing in our ears. We have a match. She's due in 3 months. We visit, share pictures, call, hope. 1 month before she's due, the birth father vows to fight the adoption. The heartbeat becomes more faint. Our last call ends with, "I guess I'm going to keep the baby." The heartbeat stops and we hold each other, waiting for the pain to end. We start over and tell ourselves we are wiser for the experience. We hear a faint heartbeat ringing in our ears. We have another match. She's due any day. We visit, share pictures, call, hope. Then we meet the beautiful baby boy. The heartbeat is louder in our ears. Our last call ends with, "I really like you, but I've decided to pick another couple. I'm sorry." The heartbeat stops and we hold each other, waiting for the pain to end. We start over and tell ourselves we can do this one more time. We can chance the pain one more time. We can hope one more time. But if it doesn't happen, we will hold each other, waiting for the pain to end forever. We hear a faint heartbeat ringing in our ears. We have a match. She's due in 3 months. We visit, share pictures, have dinner, talk about names, hope. 1 week before the due date, the birth father comes into town. He wants to be involved with choosing the family or take the baby with him to find an adoptive couple. The heartbeat skips, starts to fade away. We're at the hospital, waiting for her to give birth. Nothing is decided. We need to make a decision. Can we wait it out and hope the birth father relinquishes his rights? Or do we walk away, hold each other, and wait for the pain to end forever. We leave the hospital thinking we will not see the birth mother again or take our child home. The heartbeat is distant and faint. We hold each other. The phone rings the next day. She gave birth to a beautiful boy. The birth father wants to see us and relinquish his rights. He signs the paper when the baby is 15 hours old, an amazing act. The heartbeat becomes louder in our ears. She relinquishes her rights when the baby is 33 hours old, an amazing act. The heartbeat is deafening as we hold this beautiful boy in our arms and take him home. He is our son through and through with the added love of two incredible birth parents. The pain and challenges are deep and long for everyone involved. Some people have said to me, "So you took the easy route, adoption." I reply, "No, I went for the ride of my life." It's all about the children. That's why we do what we do. Motherhood is truly a journey and a growing process of patience, love, hope, and forgiveness. The rewards come in smiles, laughs, first steps, first words, love of trucks, trains, books, animals, and singing. Every day is new with possibilities to live, love, learn, and be together in each moment of life. I wouldn't trade any of it, for I am the mama.